Uh, all right, Gerard, you can start the meeting.
All right, thank you very much, Andreas, and good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, if you're in Europe, and welcome to our June 15th, 2022 UN breakfast. And I was just saying to our guest this morning that it has been well over 2 years now since we have had an in-person live breakfast meeting at the United Nations, thanks to our good friend, Mr. COVID. But we are very fortunate today to have with us a long-time acquaintance of one of our best friends, Francis Dubois, and a personal friend. And I'm thrilled he has taken time to be with us this morning. And I'm going to turn this over to this Rotary Club of New York. I apologize, I forgot to identify ourselves. Rotary Club of New York, Host Club of America, Club number 6. And I'm going to hand over the meeting to the chair of our UN Breakfast Committee, Malika Abrou. Malika, please do us the honors.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my pleasure. Actually, it's an honor to introduce to you my very good friend, my colleague at the UN, at the United Nations, Francis Dubois. Francis was born in Strasbourg, Alsace. He's a very, very French. He's a French in America. And his topic today will be about the exceptional friendship between France and the United States. The United States, even before they were the United States. So Francis, without further ado, everybody knows Francis. By the way, he's a friend of the Rotarians. He was awarded the Paul Harris Award. He has been a speaker at the Rotary Club of New York several times. Very, very respected. He had a distinguished career at the United Nations. Especially, I think he has served in very important countries in East Africa, West Africa, and in the Middle East. Especially in the Middle East, was the UN ambassador to Iraq, and he was also in Palestine. He dealt with very delicate issues. He has the full respect of his organization, and we are grateful for him to have accepted to speak to us today. But the topic is mainly the friendship between the United States and France, which is enduring to this day. Thank you for your attention, and Francis, you have the floor. Francis?
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. President, my dear friend Gerard. Thank you, Malika. You were too good in introducing me. It was undeserved. And thank you, Andreas Rungacher, for inviting me. I'm delighted to see so many people from around the world. This is at least the miracle of the 21st century. I see friends from Tirana, from Florida, from Shelter Island, from Florida, and from Nuremberg, from I'm very, very, even from Chelsea, New York. So I'm really very, very, very humble. One cannot say no to Malika. She insisted that I would speak to you on this wonderful occasion, and a great subject would be the relationship between the United States of America and France. And this relationship is really nothing but a love story, of a true love story. I will start by first thanking the Rotary. As you have said before, I'm a great friend of the Rotary, which is a great fraternity around the world. So let me ask you a question. Who is the first European who came to New York City?
Oh my goodness.
So no, it's not my goodness. It's not Mr. Goodness.
It's not Mr. Hudson, not Mr. On the Hudson River, no?
So
Stuyvesant.
everybody will answer, not goodness, but everybody will answer. It's the Dutch and the Dutch and the
Stuyvesant.
Dutch. It is not exactly the Dutch, excuse me. And the history is somehow different. And the history has always different aspects. The first European who came was Italian, but on a French ship. This is Jean de Verrazano, he was born Giovanni de Verrazzano, and he was sent by Francis I, our wonderful king, François Ier, and that was in 1524. So he came to, I don't want to say he discovered New York, because the Bay of New York, because it was inhabited by American Indian before. But on behalf of the French, the first European who came on this side of the ocean was a Frenchman. Malika has asked me to be short. So, you know, the relationship between the US and France, you know, could take the whole day and the whole night. So I will just focus on two persons very dear to my heart and really who epitomize this wonderful love story. The first one is Marie-Joseph Paul-Yves Gilbert Dumotier, who is better known as Marquis de Lafayette. And the second one is Georges Clemenceau. Let me start with who is known famously as Marquis de Lafayette. He was born in Auvergne. He was not born in Alsace. He was born in Auvergne in 1757 in a very small village. And he had an extraordinary career, an extraordinary life. Decided to come to the United States. He had heard through common friends that people are fighting for democracy on the other side of the ocean, and this would be a great opportunity for you. So at age 19, against the will of the King Louis XVI, who refused for him to leave, he bought a ship from Spain and came to New York, and led, of course, was received by George Washington, who at age 19, George Washington made him Major General. Imagine, the youngest Major General in the history of the United States. And he fought in the Battle of Brandywine, in the Battle of Yorktown. He played a major role. He was married. He was very intelligent, I should have said it, because before even coming to the state, he married one of the richest lady of France, Adrienne de Noailles, who, you know, if you have to marry, it's better to marry rich. It's always an advice which I give to my young friends. So Lafayette, they had 4 children. He had one son whom he named George Washington de Lafayette, who was with his father all his life. After returning to France, after his first trip, he became a key figure in the French Revolution. And in the July Revolution of 1830, to a point that once the royal family was kicked out of power, he was offered the crown, and he said, no, it's not for me. This should be given to the Orléans family, and this is why we had the last king of the French, Louis Philippe. Lafayette came back, I should say, in 1824 for the 50th anniversary of the American Revolution. He was invited by the President James Monroe and by the Congress, and Lafayette visited with his son, Georges Lafayette, George Washington de Lafayette, and he visited for 16 months all the states which existed. There were 23 states at that time. He was received as a hero. He arrived in 1824, the 15th of August, which was a Sunday. in New York City. And the mayor of New York at that time sent an emissary, said, don't disembark today, it's a Sunday. We need to welcome you. And so just one day, and you will arrive Monday, tomorrow. And the next day, on that Monday, the 16th of August, 1824, there was 45,000, a third of the city of New York was welcoming. It was the largest event, a welcome event only the American can do. So he traveled just to show you the love and respect which the US showed to the hero, the one whom we called the hero of two worlds. On the 6th of September, 1825, it was the 65th birthday of Lafayette. The Congress voted a special birthday gift of $200,000. 200,000 in 1825 means more than 4.5 million in today's currency. So that was a wonderful gift. Imagine. But what is important is that he was very happy to see this democracy at work, and he learned a lot from that. And when he came back, he had this, he brought some earth from Bunker Hill, which he had asked to put on his grave. He passed away in 1834. He's buried in Paris in a small cemetery in the 12th arrondissement in Picpus, and the American flag has been on his grave since 1834, including under when Paris was under German occupation in World War II. So when he passed away, the former president, John Quincy Adams, the son of John Adams, who was a great friend of Lafayette, gave an eulogy at the Congress. The eulogy lasted 3 hours. Okay, you will say people in those days had time to listen, but 3 hours to say all this. So this is really the epitome of this extraordinary love story between the US and America. The second person I would like to mention, and which is a story dear to my heart and very unknown in France, is Georges Clemenceau. Georges Clemenceau was one of the most extraordinary politicians. He was born, again, not in Alsace, unfortunately, but he was born in West France. He was born in Mouilleron-en-Parets, in what we call la terre des Chouans, the land of the Chouans, who are very stubborn, very royalist. And Clemenceau was very much against he was born in 1841. He became a doctor, a medical doctor, and he was a Democrat, so he was put in prison, and by the Second Empire, by Napoleon III police, and he escaped and didn't know what to do, so jumped on a ship and came to America. And he spent 4.5 years in America, first in New York City, where he gave some lessons. He taught French. He went then to Great Barrington in Massachusetts, where he taught French again in one of the schools, and then in Stamford, Connecticut, where he taught horseback riding. And that was a very good assignment, since he met a student whom he married, and he married Mary Plummer. So here is Georges Clemenceau, married to a daughter from a Boston dentist. But what I wanted to say, the dates are very important. He was then in America from 1865 to 1869, and those dates are very, very important. Imagine Clemenceau leaving this authoritarian regime of Napoleon III and discovering American democracy. There was the first impeachment trial against President Johnson. There was this whole debate about the role of slavery. There was he became a journalist. He wrote to the for Le Temps in a Paris newspaper, and once he came back in those 4.5 years, what he learned made him this extraordinary statesman he will become. Mainly, you know, the Prime Minister of France, the great Democrat, and of course the winner of World War I in the whom we call in France le Père la Victoire. He retained a strong faith in the American democratic ideals, and he learned from the States this sense of compromise that would become his hallmark in his political career. He came back to the States to visit, of course, and he negotiated with President Wilson after the end of World War I, and he negotiated the peace treaty. So I think I will stop here because you asked me to be short. There is so much more to say about this love story between the US and France. I think I will take some questions, and I thank you very much for listening.
Oh, thank you, Francis. Francis, I thought you were going to, you had not indicated this, but I thought you might touch on Alexis de Tocqueville.
Yeah, Alexis Tocqueville came to this country in 1834 and wrote this extraordinary book, De la démocratie en Amérique. And I will link it again to Clemenceau, because Clemenceau wrote 95 letters, you know, in those days, of course, being the journalist would just send papers. So he wrote 95 papers analyzing the American society and the American democracy. And the last paper he wrote, the 95th one, he said, now we understand that the true sense of this American democracy, which Tocqueville did not comprehend. So Tocqueville played a very important role, but it was re-nurtured by Clemenceau 50 years later.
I remember reading Tocqueville many years ago in high school, and was struck by his prediction in the 1830s that the two protagonists in the future would be the United States and Russia. So, okay, Malika?
Yes, thank you, Francis. It's a really an extraordinary experience. For those who don't know Georges Clemenceau, while he was in the United States, he was not famous. Maybe that's why we do not know much about him. But in Europe, he looms great. He looms. He's one of the most important people in the 19th century. Certainly, he shaped up. And what I want to talk about is the cross-fertilization between the French principles and what Clemenceau learned in the United States, and that he brought to France, but also to Europe. Now, he was one of the most important people in the government of France, and his influence was of great importance. It was at the same time that France was colonizing many countries, North Africa, West Africa, and bringing, you know, that the French love their civilization, and they pacify with their civilization. So, but there are elements also that Clemenceau and the French picked up from the United States.
Yes, Malika, thank you very much. Clemenceau fought all his life against racism and anti-Semitism. Racism was against colonization because, as you very well said, the end of the 19th century, the French went into Indochina, to Africa and so forth. And he was a great opponent. We have seen, because he was an extraordinary speaker, there are some extraordinary speeches when some people said the French have this mission of civilization, a mission civilisatrice, in order to teach the people in Indochina. That was precisely in 1898. And he jumped and said, listen, we are all equal, and there is no mission of the white man, neither in Asia nor in Africa. He was a great fighter. Anti-Semitism, he's the one, before his political career, he was the head of a wonderful newspaper, and he's the one, when Émile Zola saw him and said, listen, we have to do something against this Dreyfus, this Captain Dreyfus, who has been, put in Cayenne in prison. We have to do this. There is a great injustice. And Clemenceau immediately said, yes, I will do it. And he published a front page, this extraordinary article, J'accuse. So he was, he learned this also from while in America, when he was very much against slavery, and so was Lafayette also, but that's another story. I got on the chat, I got a question on the chat, I don't know if you've seen it, saying that I did not speak about Bartholdi. Okay, so I will speak very quickly on Auguste Bartholdi, who was born in Colmar in Alsace, and Bartholdi was a young man who went to Egypt and was absolutely in great admiration of this extraordinary monument, and he says, I want to build the largest statue on earth. So he was in the entourage of Ferdinand de Lesseps, the one who built the Canal de Suez and the Suez Canal, and de Lesseps bring him to the Khedive, to the head of Egypt, and says this young man wants to create the largest statue on earth in front of the Suez Canal. The Khedive was not very, very interested at all. So Bartholdi comes back to Paris, very disappointed. He has this project of this enormous statue, and then he meets de La Boulaye, who was from the French aristocracy, and says, you know, I have a plan for you. Why don't you do it in New York for the 100th anniversary of the American Revolution? And we can bring the American, the French, and so forth. So to make a long story short, the French paid for because it's all about money. It's like in the Rotary Club, you see, we need money. So the French paid for the statue, and the American would pay for the pedestal. Bartholdi came, and arriving in New York, he saw this little island, I forget the name, and he said, I want to do my statue here. So he was lucky enough to meet Pulitzer, who came from Hungary. He says, that's a great idea. Bartholdi said, but you know, we need the money. He said, Pulitzer said, we have an idea. We're going to write to everybody, and they will pay a dime, 25 cents, $1. And this is how the first fundraising adventure, and this is how they built the Statue of Liberty, who is again an extraordinary symbol between this lover between the US and France. So thank you for Christophe, who has asked in the chat the question.
The name of the island, by the way, Francis, was Bedloe Island.
Yeah, Bedloe Island. You know, I'm
And
getting old, and so
it was. I think it was changed in the early 1970s to Liberty Island, which is what it's called today.
Yes.
And Francis, thank you very much for this beautiful breakfast and presentation, and also to follow up on what Mr. Schriffen was saying. Bartholdi was at this famous dinner with La Boulaye. La Boulaye, who was himself a great lawyer, knowledgeable about the United States at the time, but also a great anti-esclavagiste. And this is the connection with the Clemenceau, the anti-esclavagiste tendency of Clemenceau, but also of La Boulaye and this great Alsacien Bartholdi.
And de La Boulay's descendant was a French ambassador 15 years ago in New York, and then from Washington went to as ambassador in Moscow. He was consul general, he was general counsel in Jerusalem when I served there a few years ago in the Palestinian territories. So everything, you know, we're all connected. It's like the Rotary, we are all connected, we are all brothers and sisters, and this is what we have to do in the world and to promote peace. And what we see, you know, in Ukraine and so forth is absolutely horrible, absolutely horrible.
Yeah, it's the failure of diplomacy, unfortunately, because it could have been worked out. Of course, when you have a belligerent that has, you know, objectives to conquer and to, but still, at this time, in this time and age, we should avoid killing children, women, and it's just a whole mess. And
Malika, if I may I ask Francis a question? If we can
Please.
segue into something. Of course, you mentioned your extensive, incredible experience and service in the Middle East, in a number of different venues in the Middle East. Any predictions of where the conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis is going to go?
Thank you, Gerard. Let's be positive and let's be optimistic. There is a solution, the two-state solution. That was put together by negotiation and so forth. And you know, the Palestinian and the Israeli, everybody wants peace. You know, a Palestinian mother is like an Israeli mother. They want, you know, they want peace for their children. They want food. They want education. And okay, so we need peace. We need to open the borders. I lived 2.5 years in Gaza. The people could not leave. And Gaza is 360 square kilometers. At that time was with 1.1 million inhabitants. Now I understand there are 2 million inhabitants. It's absolutely unsustainable. So we need to open the borders. We need to work together. And I was always amazed, and let's not do politics because it's not a topic of any Rotary breakfast. But while working in Gaza and living in Gaza, I was always amazed for people who could not cross the street and could not, unless they had a permit, which was very difficult to obtain. I was very amazed to see the resilience and the lack of aggressivity. I mean, I come from a country, as you know, the French strike when it snows, when it rains, when the sun is too, you know, we strike and we're in the street for whatever reason. Whenever you go to France, there is a strike. So anyhow, that may be a long answer to a short question. We need peace, and the Palestinian and the Israeli are cousins. They should work together. They work together, and economy, you know, is will bring them together.
I have never understood, and perhaps you can enlighten me and our audience. We have the example of how Gandhi brought the British Empire to its feet. We saw the same techniques in the United States with the Civil Rights Revolution, which most of us still don't understand how enormous and complicated that was. Why have the Palestinian people not adopted the concept of peaceful, nonviolent protest? Simply saying, we're not going to obey the law, we're going to sit down, and that's it.
Yeah, let's not discuss that. Since January 1st, you had 135 Palestinians who got killed by the Israeli and non-Israeli. So, I mean, it's not a question of non-violence on one side, on the other side, but I don't want to discuss that. Malika said it's a failure of diplomacy. Let's open the border. And again, I want to come back to my own history. I come from Alsace. Alsace has been, is a province which has fought, you know, is French since 1648, okay? Has been occupied century after century and so forth, has been destroyed and so forth. Now, thanks to the extraordinary intelligence of after World War II, with the creation of the European Union, we have now been in peace for more than 70 years. So, and I always thought about that. The Palestinians and the Israeli have to work together, and they will, and they will do. But the two-state solution has to be accepted by the Israeli, especially by the Israeli. Don't blame the victims. The victims are the Palestinians, and some Israeli also. But the two-state solution is the solution.
I noticed that Michael Blum from Rotary Club Wiesbaden is online with us.
Guten Tag, Wiesbaden, guten Tag.
And
Hello.
next week, as we're doing on the 23rd of June, Rotary Club of New York with our sister club, Rotary Club in Wiesbaden, is doing a special Zoom, and we look forward to that and invite everyone to participate in that. That's the 23rd at 12 o'clock New York time, Eastern.
We are all looking forward to having you, and we are really, really excited about the partnership.
Likewise, thank you.
Did you have a question, Mr. Bloom?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, we are greeting Wiesbaden. We are greeting Tirana. I'm very, very, very honored to have somebody from Tirana. And Mrs. Corridor, where are you? In Brooklyn? You are muted. Can somebody tell Mrs. Corridor to unmute?
Eva, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, okay. I'm in Fort Lee, New Jersey, but I belong to the Rotary Club of Paris.
Oh, how nice.
Academy. And I wanted to tell you that I taught Lafayette came also to the Naval Academy in Annapolis, where I taught for 17 years. And the midshipmen all knew Lafayette because there was a statue in Annapolis. I just wanted to add this, that he's well known down there. Okay. And I have been going back and forth between Paris and New York all my life. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. And as I said, when Lafayette came back, and we are celebrating his return in 2024, we are celebrating the bicentennial of his return to the States. And as you said, Eva, he visited all the states in that, including Annapolis, and he went, and they were They created city after his name, the first one being Lafayetteville in North Carolina. They created, I mean, in every single state at that time, he was welcome.
Mhm. I was also interested. I've always found it fascinating, Francis, that the ambassador from the Continental Congress, before we became the United States, was John Adams. And John Adams was always trying to get an audience with the court, Louis XVI, and was never successful, as far as I know, in doing that. The real hero was Benjamin Franklin. And what he was able to accomplish was nothing, in my opinion, short of astounding and amazing. He is the one literally who, I don't want to say single-handedly, but I guess the argument can be made that he did this, that brought the French Navy on the side of the colonies, and that was what eventually was able to swing the tide in favor of the American independence movement against the British Crown.
I fully agree. What has happened, Lafayette's father-in-law was the Duc de Noailles, a very, very important person. And when you have a rich and wealthy father-in-law, it's good for the marriage. So he was sent to Metz.
Good advice.
He was Metz, he was sent to Metz as the head of the regiment in Lorraine. And of course, this young man who was full of ambition was terribly bored to death. I know Metz today. I mean, I have nothing against Lorraine being Alsatian, but I can see why in the 18th century you can be bored in Metz. So what happened, and this I'm coming back to your comment, Gérard, he went to Paris and met Benjamin Franklin, who gave me, he said, okay, you go to the States, you know, you will have opportunities. And Benjamin Franklin wrote a letter of recommendation to George Washington. This is why, because people ask, how did George Washington welcome this young man who was, who nobody knew at age 19? And it was based on Benjamin Franklin's recommendation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Benjamin Franklin made some very, very close friends in the French court, and through his fraternal organization, and was able to make his appeal. And I guess there was a certain amount of appeal he had to the feminine population.
I was about to say,
Yes.
There is fraternal organization, but there is also sex appeal. You know, in history, you always have stories, love stories. And Benjamin Franklin was admired at the court of Versailles. Women loved him, loved his big nose, and was terribly attracted to him. So, you know, it's also very important, the role of the of ladies. I fully agree.
Yeah. Very good. And did anyone else have any? I don't want to monopolize. Anyone have any questions, comments?
Yes. Well, this friendship really endures. First, I want to track back a bit. The French got very interested in the colonies. The background is that France and England were at war. They were bitter enemies. So of course they helped the colonists get rid of Britain, get off England, right? Am I wrong, Francis?
No. So what is
there
the question?
There was a power play there.
Yeah. No. England. You know, has been. I mean, this opposition between France and England, you know, has lasted for centuries. So, and in terms of colonization, certainly.
So they were only happy. They were only happy to help the colonists against the redcoats.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about Louisiana. Louisiana could have been, in my view, another Quebec. It could have been, if it had not been sold to the Americans, I think it was, they could have established there a French, well, it was a French colony, but it could have grown like Quebec grew in Canada, and we would have been bilingual in this country.
I mean, we don't rewrite history. The French needed money. They sold Louisiana, after the revolution, the wars and so forth. The French needed money, so they sold Louisiana for very little money. And France lost Louisiana. I mean, we don't rewrite history, but French is still spoken somehow in Louisiana.
In the French quarters in New Orleans, certainly.
New Orleans, yes. Francis, can we update this, the relationship between the United States and France today? And I know you don't like to talk politics sometimes, but what's happening in France politically?
What happened in France with the relationship with America?
Yes.
It's excellent.
The French, I mean, the French have always loved America. The French have always loved the Americans, okay? You may not think so when you are here, because, the French complain. It's you know that you land in Paris, Charles de Gaulle, and then people start to complain. So they will complain, but they love Americans. They love Americans. So the relationship is excellent between the two countries, and they're great allies. And it's the love story continues. It's like an old couple now. The couple, is now 200 years old. So after 200 years of marriage, people are still in love, but it's different. It's no longer what it was at the beginning, like in any marriage, Gérard.
Yeah, you mentioned, I know this for a fact, that every year at the anniversary of his death, the American ambassador to France always visits the grave of Lafayette to plant flowers, and the American flag flies over Lafayette's grave as well.
And if you ever go to France, I would urge you first to visit the cemetery, Picpus, in the 12th arrondissement in East Paris, but also to visit where he passed away in 60 kilometers outside of Paris in the east. And it was the castle of Adrienne de Noailles. It was one of the property of the Noailles family.
Mm-hmm.
I think also France is very grateful for the Americans to have liberated Europe,
absolutely.
to have liberated France, and this gratitude is palpable.
Yeah.
I
should have said it, Malika, thank you. I should have said it in World War I and World War II. I mean, the Americans have proved, this immense, immense sacrifices to liberate our country, and the French will never forget.
And
if I may add, the Germans feel the same about being liberated, and thank you for that.
There is an image that always sticks in my mind. It's the funeral of John F. Kennedy. The international, the procession was led by General de Gaulle, French.
Yeah. In his uniform, in his 1940 uniform.
In his 1990 uniform, and it was so symbolic. It was the liberation of Europe by the Americans, and the gratitude that the French were showing to an American president. So but this this friendship with everything French, you see it everywhere well, of course, in museums, in the way people dress. I mean, everything that's French in the cuisine, in the fries, in the French fries. Now, that doesn't mean that France follows everything that the Americans do. Remember, with the invasion of Iraq, the French government did not go along.
Yeah, I mean, again, let's not do politics. The French President Chirac was very much against the invasion, saying that, and I was serving in Iraq at that time. I was the head of the UN office.
I know.
And I must say, I was I was absolutely against this war. And I told my American friends, I told the Americans who came, but nobody listens. But anyhow, let's not do politics. War is never an answer. War is never an answer. It's never a solution.
I totally agree.
To have invaded Iraq and to kill 275,000 Iraqis based on lies and is absolutely, it's terrible. But so we don't have French fries anymore on this side of the ocean, and yeah.
Yeah, well, you only have to read von Clausewitz and about war, and you realize it's never a solution. But yeah, I must say that one thing that was very heartening, at least to me, was how, and again, we're getting back to politics, how the European Union came together over Ukraine. It was very, very, to me, very reassuring that these old ties that sometimes we take for granted and say, well, they no longer exist, they're very much alive.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And I think it's very, very healthy, not just for Europe, but for the world, to see an entire continent come together. It's I mean, even again in Tirana, even Albania joining it. It was just so heartening to see all of the countries of the European Union coming together and saying, enough, that's it. Here's where we must make a stand, and that was a very good thing to see.
Because
someone mentioned something about the Statue of Liberty. I don't know how many people are aware of the fact, but at one point there was some, what's the word I should use? Some of the proponents of the statue, the French, were upset that the pieces of the statue had not yet been erected, a base had not been designed, it had not been put up in New York City, and there was a very real movement to move the site of the Statue of Liberty to Philadelphia, because of the fact that New York had not done what it was supposed to do. And it was the Union League Club in New York City that actually said, no, we cannot let that happen, and used its own resources to have the architect design the base. And the lead speaker happened to be Chauncey Depew, who was the senator from the state of New York, US senator, but was also president of the Union League Club. And he was the keynote speaker at the dedication of the statue in the 1880s. And again, going back to something that Francis said, in the 19th century, orators were very long-winded, and Chauncey Depew was no exception. And he went on for a long time, and someone in the audience raised a hand and said, "Excuse me, Senator, but I can't hear what you're saying." And he said, "Well, that's no problem. Let me start over from the beginning," which he did. So, but no, there was a possibility that the Statue of Liberty would not have been erected in New York City, but then people came to their senses. They said, "Okay, enough. Let's move on this and get it done." So,
allow me to, since we have our friend Sandrine online. We are organizing, and it's another example of this extraordinary cooperation between France, the Francophone world, and the United States. We are organizing on November 22nd La Rencontre littéraire, the second literary encounter at the National Arts Club on the in New York City in Gramercy Park, the 22nd of November. So with authors who are writing in French, but on the side of the ocean. So you are all invited, and I hope the Rotary Club will be well represented. We did it last year, and we did it again this year. I repeat, the 22nd of November at the National Arts Club on Gramercy Park.
Eva, you have a, thank you. I will certainly participate. Eva, you have a question?
Well, I just wanted to say that there is a Statue of Liberty also in Paris. It is in the 16th district, very close. I mean, very close to the Seine, the Les Bords de la Seine, and it's much smaller than the one here in New York. But there is one, and I almost bought a little apartment there one day.
I saw the replica. And it was a very good idea to have put one there. Yeah. I think it does belong there, definitely. Of course, the Statue of Liberty is the most important symbol here in New York City, and it happens to be French.
Right.
Like
Franco-American, because again, as President Gerard said, the American paid for the pedestal, for the bases. So it's again one of this extraordinary cooperation between France and the United States of America.
That's right.
And perhaps you might want to mention, Francis, that the Paris American Club is having a selling in July.
The Paris American Club, which was created in 1940. So this is also a wonderful story. In 1940, somebody speak on the phone. Is it in Wiesbaden? I can see Wiesbaden. No. So the Paris American Club was created in Paris and in New York. Once Paris was occupied in 1940, many Americans came back to this country and said, we have to meet and we have to reminisce and we have to enjoy this joie de vivre, which we enjoyed in Paris. So they met every month. And the tradition continues with the Paris American Club. And our next event, I mean, there are two events. There's an event next Tuesday, but there is a cruise on the 12th of July around the Statue of Liberty. 12th July, you go on the website of the Paris American Club. And it's a wonderful event. We'll have music, we'll have songs, and I see that Mr. Bloom is catching a train from Wiesbaden. So we wish you bon voyage and enjoy Wiesbaden.
No, but he's staying with us. He's staying with us. Doing all this, he's staying with us.
And he's catching a train, he tells me in the chat. So
yes,
the 12th of July, there is a cruise to honor the Statue of Liberty, and it's just 2 days before Bastille Day, and 10 days and 8 days after the 4th of July.
And I think there is, Francis, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know if it's been changed because of COVID, but I think it's on either West 60th or 61st Street here in Manhattan. There's always a big street fair for Bastille Day.
Yeah, I don't know what they will do this year. I don't know. Yeah, there is always, I don't know what they will do. But I know that they will have a major event in Central Park.
Yeah.
I think the eve of I think maybe the 13th, with a play to honor Molière. We are celebrating this year the 400th anniversary of Molière, and there will be a play, Le Misanthrope, which will be played in Central Park in English to celebrate again the love story between America and the US, and between the US and France, and the event is free, which is, so the price is good.
Yeah.
Yes, last year there was a huge concert. It was really beautiful. Eva, you have your...
Yeah, I have something to add about Rotary, and Andreas can support that. I took 15 Rotarians to Paris one day, And they were afraid because the French are not always that friendly, they said. But we had an excellent experience there. Everything reached out to the Americans, and we had hotel, a man who had a hotel who gave us the rooms and all this. So it was a wonderful experience. I'm sure Andreas remembers that.
Yeah, and can I just say something? When you said the French are not always very friendly, I would disagree with that if you allow me. They would not be always friendly when an American on the Champs-Élysées walks into you and asks in English a question. It even happened. So I will always advise my American friends when they visit to learn at least 3 words: bonjour, merci. And when the French see that they don't speak French, then they will be friendlier. But you know, to jump on a French person and to ask a question, I even have refused to answer, because I think it's rude to expect somebody on the Champs-Élysées or wherever to speak English. Excuse me.
I just want to come back to this Paris American Club, of which I have been a member for many years. And Gerard also has joined recently. Francis has been there for centuries, I think. It has very good programs it has lectures and outings, discussions. And also, if you want to improve on your French, they have sessions, gatherings, at which you can practice your French without being shy or because everybody is in the same situation. As you know, when we are adults, we want to speak perfectly and not be not making mistakes. Don't be shy with this. So you can join that club. I think Francis gave you the website address. Paris American Club.org or .com. Paris American Club, look it up and you will find it.
Thank you, Malika. Thank you, Malika, for advertising this.
Club,
Thank you. You just find it on Google, Paris American Club. I just want to correct you. I have not been a member of that club for centuries. I was not born centuries in the 18th centuries. So I've been for many years, I agree. One great advantage, and I'm talking to Eva on this, one great advantage of being member of the Paris American Club is that you are allowed to go to the Cercle Interallié in Paris. You know, the French is not a club country. This is British. The British have clubs and so forth. The French have bistro, have a restaurant, have bar and so forth. We don't have clubs. It's not in our mentality. But in 1919, after the American liberated France with the British and so forth, the American and the British said, you need a club. We need something very, so the French, of course, being very grateful of what the Americans did in World War I, created this Cercle Interallié, which is one of the wonderful clubs outside of the Élysée Palace in Paris, in one of the best area, and I highly recommend. It's just wonderful.
Yes.
I just want to tell Francis that that Paris is my second home. I was born in Hungary, but then I came to Paris, and even today I have a tiny studio au 39 Quai d'Anjou. C'est sur l'île Saint-Louis.
Oh, wow.
I see.
Yeah.
Only the best. I lived in the 20th, where the African and the Arab lived, and you lived in Île Saint-Louis, which is the most beautiful island.
C'est le 4e.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know. We very well know.
You have the best ice cream and the best sorbet.
Yes.
In Île Saint-Louis, and
The best location.
And the best location next to the Notre Dame, absolutely.
Right.
Notre Dame de Paris, exactly.
So are you inviting us?
Well, once I'm there, you're welcome. I have been here in America because I had a health problem, and they took care of me here. So that's why. But I'm anxious to return to my little studio and to Paris and my friends. Most of my friends, I studied in France. I have diplomas from the Sorbonne. So I know many people in France.
Okay. Malika, I think we have come to the end of our hour.
It's been a pleasure really to have you, Francis, talk to us.
I think we should mention that Francis and Joseph Klee were actually the founders years ago. I won't go back into the 19th century, but they were the founders years ago of the UN, the Rotary Club breakfast here at the UN. And
Yes.
so we are, this is my last year as president. Actually, we have a new president who will be coming in, Levent Askert, in July. So this is my last time serving as president at the UN breakfast. And it's very apropos, very apt that Francis is our guest. And I'm very, very honored and thankful, Francis, thankful to you that you've taken the time out to be with us this morning.
And thank you to you.
We are not losing Gerard. He will still be with us.
Right.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.